The morning my deal hit the news, I was sitting alone in my apartment eating leftover pad thai from the night before, still in my pajamas. My family was at my aunt's house in Scottsdale for Thanksgiving. Without me. Their choice, not mine. Let me back up. I grew up in a house where success had a very specific shape. It looked like my cousin Danielle, pre-med at Arizona State, Dean's List every semester, driving the car my uncle bought her for graduation. It sounded like the conversations at the dinner table where the adults talked about real estate portfolios and stock options while I quietly pushed food around my plate. It smelled like the perfume my mother wore to every family event where she introduced me as my daughter who's doing something with photography. Something with photography. I was 22 when I started my business. A content creation studio, brand photography, social media campaigns, the whole thing. I had 3 clients, a camera I'd bought on the payment plan, and a bedroom I'd converted into a makeshift studio by hanging white sheets on the wall and zip tying a softbox light to my bookshelf. My family's reaction was what you'd expect. My dad sat me down at the kitchen table the week I launched my website and told me this was a phase. Not unkindly, he genuinely believed it. He said the market was saturated, that every girl with an iPhone thought she was a photographer now, that I needed a backup plan. He slid a community college brochure across the table. Just look at their business administration program, he said. 2 years. Then you can always do the photography on weekends. My mother was quieter about her doubts, which somehow made it worse. She just stopped asking. When relatives called and asked how I was doing, I'd hear her in the next room. She's figuring things out. That phrase became the family code for, she hasn't gotten there yet. My older brother was the worst, but only because he said it with a smile. He had a corporate job in finance, the kind where you wear the same navy suit every day and talk about Q3 projections. He started calling me the artist at family dinners. Always, with air quotes. Always while refilling his glass of wine. How are things going for the artist? Big grin. Everyone laughs. I laugh too, because what else do you do? The Thanksgiving I'm talking about happened when I was 24. I'd been running my business for almost 2 years by then. I had maybe 12 clients, small businesses, a couple local restaurants, one regional clothing brand that had found me through Instagram. I was covering my rent, my car payment, my groceries. I wasn't wealthy, but I was okay. I was building something. My mother called me 3 days before the holiday. I remember I was editing photos when my phone rang, sitting cross-legged on my living room floor with my laptop balanced on a throw pillow. She said the family was gathering at my aunt's place this year. Bigger event than usual. My aunt and uncle were celebrating their 30th anniversary, so my dad's entire side of the family was flying in. My grandmother from Ohio, my cousin from Portland, my uncle's business partners and their families. Around 40 people total. I said that sounded wonderful. I asked what time I should arrive. There was a pause. My mother said, very carefully, that she thought it might be better if I didn't come this year. I asked her to explain that. She said my aunt and uncle had worked very hard to build their lives and their reputation, and this was a celebration of that. She said the guest list was full of people who were, and I remember this exact word, established. Doctors, executives, people who had achieved things. She said she loved me, but she didn't want me to feel out of place. She said maybe next year, when I had more to show. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said okay, I understood, and I hung up. Then I sat on my living room floor for a very long time. I want to be honest about what that felt like, because I think people assume you get angry in that moment. I did get angry eventually. But first I just felt stupid. Like I'd been walking around thinking I was part of something and suddenly realized I wasn't. Like the invitation had always had an asterisk on it, and I'd just never noticed. I called my best friend, Ivy. She drove over with a bottle of wine, and we sat on my apartment steps in the November cold, and she let me talk until I ran out of words. At some point she said, very quietly, you know this isn't about you, right? It's about them needing to perform success for each other. That reframing didn't fix anything, but it helped me get off the steps and go back inside. I spent Thanksgiving alone, not miserably. I ordered food, I watched movies, I edited a photo shoot for a local bakery. But there was this low hum underneath everything. The kind of background noise you can ignore but can't quite turn off. My mother texted me a photo from the dinner. Big table, everyone smiling, the good china out. She captioned it, "Miss you this year. Next time." I didn't respond. Here's what my family didn't know about that week. 4 days before Thanksgiving, I had gotten an email from a company called Lumen Goods. They were a mid-sized lifestyle brand out of Austin, sustainable home goods, decent online presence, growing fast. Their marketing director had found me through a campaign I'd done for a Portland-based coffee roaster. She said they were launching a major product line in January and were looking for a creative partner to handle their entire visual identity. Campaign photography, website assets, social content for the quarter. The budget was the largest number I had ever seen in a professional email addressed to me. I had a meeting with them the Monday after Thanksgiving. I drove 4 hours to Austin. I sat across from their marketing team in a glass-walled conference room and I showed them my portfolio. I talked about how I worked, what I believed about brand storytelling, why consistency in visual language mattered. I was terrified the entire time in the way that feels exactly like excitement if you hold it right. At the end of the meeting, the director, a woman named Ruth Ann who had the energy of someone who had no patience for anything that wasn't excellent, looked at my work for a long moment and said, "We've talked to 6 studios. You're the one who actually understands what we're trying to say." We shook hands. The contract would be ready by Friday. I drove home in the dark, stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and stood next to my car eating a bag of chips, looking up at the stars, thinking, nobody in my family knows this is happening. And the strangest part was how okay that felt. Friday came. The contract landed in my inbox at 11:47 a.m. I signed it, sent it back, and then sat very still for a while. I texted Ivy. She sent back 37 fire emojis in a row. I did not call my mother. I didn't make any announcement, didn't post on social media, didn't email anyone, didn't bring it up when my dad texted me that Saturday asking how I was holding up. I said fine. He said good. That was the whole conversation. What I did instead was work. I hired my first contractor, a photo assistant named Gwen, who had just graduated from art school and needed her first real gig. I rented studio space for the first time instead of shooting out of my apartment. I bought the camera I've been looking at for 2 years. These weren't extravagances, they were necessities for the scope of what I'd taken on. But every single purchase felt like something. The Lumen Goods campaign launched in January. It was bigger than I'd expected. They put serious ad spend behind it. The campaign ran in digital and some print placements. A design publication picked it up as part of a feature on emerging brand identities. That's when things moved fast in the way that's hard to describe from the outside. 3 brands reached out in the same week. Then 2 more. Then a corporate client, my little studio, had no business landing. Except that we did because Ruth Ann at Lumen had mentioned my name in a room I wasn't in. By March, I had a wait list. I'm telling you all of this because I need you to understand the context for what happened next. My cousin Danielle, the pre-med one, the Dean's List one, had been following my Instagram for years. We weren't close, but we were cordial. She sent me a DM in February that just said, "Your work is gorgeous. Seriously." I said thank you. That was that. But then the design publication feature came out, and apparently Danielle showed it to my aunt, who showed it to my uncle, and something shifted in how they were talking about me. I know this because my mother called. She was warm in a way she hadn't been in months. She said she'd seen some things about my work online. She said she'd been showing people. She said my aunt wanted to know if I'd be interested in photographing their vacation home for an interior design portfolio her friend was putting together. Unpaid, of course, but great exposure. I said I'd have to check my schedule. My schedule was completely full, and we both knew I knew that. Then came Easter. My mother called again, this time to invite me to the family gathering at my aunt's house. Her voice had a particular quality to it, the same warm, careful tone as before, but with something underneath it. Like she was extending an invitation and hoping I wouldn't notice it was the same table I'd been turned away from 5 months ago. I said I was busy. She said surely I could come for a few hours. I said I appreciated the invitation, but I had a client deadline. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your father and I are proud of you. We've always been proud of you." And I said very gently, very evenly, "Mom, you told me I didn't have enough to show to sit at that table. I haven't forgotten that. I'm not angry, but I'm also not interested in being included now that there's something to gain from it." She started to say something. I said I loved her. I said goodbye. I hung up and went back to editing. I want to be honest about this part too, because I've thought about it a lot. I didn't feel righteous. I didn't feel like I'd won something. What I felt was a kind of flatness, the emotional equivalent of a long exhale. Like I'd been holding something for months without realizing it and had finally just set it down, Ivy took me out for dinner that night, just the two of us, and she asked how I felt. I said I felt okay. She looked at me like she was checking if that was true. I said, I think I'm okay because I stopped needing their version of the story. Like, somewhere in those 5 months, I just stopped. She raised her glass. She said, to the table you built yourself. My business is not the same thing it was 2 years ago. I have a small team now, Gwen, and a creative director I brought on named Theo, who had been freelancing for a decade and was tired of working alone. We have a studio space in Phoenix that we actually like coming into. We have clients on 3-month retainers. We have work I'm genuinely proud of. My family exists at a certain distance. My mom and I talk, but differently now. There's a new honesty in it. She says things like, I should have been more supportive back then. And I say, yes, you should have. And we leave it there. It's not warm in the way I used to want it to be. But it's real. My dad has come around in the way dads come around. Slowly and by pretending he never doubted me in the first place. He sent me an article last month about female entrepreneurs in the Southwest. He said, thought of you. That's his version of an apology. I'm learning to take it for what it is. My brother still calls me the artist sometimes, but the air quotes are gone. And twice in the last year he's asked me for advice. Once about a side project he's thinking about. Once about whether he should try to negotiate a raise. I help him. That's what family does when it's working. Danielle and I have actually become closer than we've ever been. She left the pre-med track, turned out in her 2nd year of med school. She's doing something in education now and seems lighter for it. We text sometimes. She's good people. She always was. She just had her own version of that table to escape from. The person I think about most when I think about all of this is Ivy. She was there before any of it. Before the Lumen contract, before the waitlist, before the design feature. She was there at my apartment steps in November cold. Just listening. She didn't tell me I was going to make it. She didn't give me a speech. She just stayed until I was ready to go back inside. That's the thing about the people who actually show up for you. They're not the ones in the room when things go well. They're the ones in the parking lot at 11 at night when you're not sure what you're doing, and the leftovers in your fridge are 3 days old, and your family has just told you very politely that you're not enough yet. Those are your people. I didn't know that at 22. I know it now. I still have the text my mom sent from Thanksgiving dinner, the one with the photo. The good china, everyone smiling, the caption that said, missed you. Next time. I've thought about deleting it. I keep it instead, not out of bitterness. I want to be clear about that. I keep it because it's a record of a moment that turned out to matter. The night I sat alone in my apartment and ate leftover pad thai and didn't know yet that 4 days later, my life was going to start moving in a direction I couldn't have planned for. I keep it because sometimes you need proof that you survived the part that was supposed to stop you. To anyone who's been told they don't have enough to show yet, maybe the table they're keeping you from isn't the one you need to be at. Build your own. Set it however you want. Invite the people who showed up before you had anything to offer. That's the table worth sitting at. If this story hit something for you, drop a comment and tell me about your table. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and stick around. There's more where this came from. I thought a lot about why my family said what they said, and I don't think they were cruel people. I think they were scared people, scared of anything that didn't fit the shape they already recognized as success. When you grow up in a house where worth is measured by title and salary, and the right kind of degree on the right kind of wall, you start to see everything else as a risk. They weren't trying to break me. They were trying to protect themselves from the discomfort of not understanding what I was building. That doesn't make it okay. But it makes it make sense. Here's what I've come to believe. The way people treat you when you have nothing to offer them is the most honest information you will ever receive about them. Not what they say at Christmas dinner. Not the texts they send when your name shows up somewhere impressive. The moment when you're 24 and eating ramen, and your camera is on a payment plan and you have 3 clients and a lot of hope. And they look at all of that and say, not yet. That moment is a mirror. It shows you exactly who they are when there's nothing in it for them. And what you do with that information is a reflection of who you are. I could have shrunk. I almost did. There's a version of me that spends the next 2 years chasing their approval, taking the safer path, making the safer choices, showing up to every family event with receipts of my progress, desperate to prove I belonged at their table. I know that version of me. I was her for longer than I'd like to admit. What changed wasn't one big moment. It was smaller than that. It was Ivy sitting with me on those apartment steps in the cold, not telling me what to do, just staying. It was Ruth Ann looking at my portfolio and saying I was the one who understood. It was Gwen showing up to her first shoot nervous and talented and trusting me with her time. Every single one of those moments with someone choosing me before I had anything impressive to hand them. That's what started to rewrite something in me. The work I'm most proud of didn't come from wanting to prove my family wrong. It came from finally stopping caring whether they were watching. There's a difference, and it took me a while to find it. Proving someone wrong still keeps them at the center of your story. Letting go puts you there instead. Danielle figured that out too, in her own way. She left the path everyone had mapped out for her and found something that actually fit. We never talked about it directly, but I think we understood each other more after that than we ever had before. What I want to say to anyone who's been told they don't have enough to show yet is this. The people who gatekeep belonging based on achievement have already told you everything you need to know. You don't owe them a seat at your table when you build one. You owe them nothing except the basic decency you'd offer a stranger. Save the seats for Ivy. Save them for the people who showed up before the deal, before the contract, before the feature in the design publication. Save them for the ones who sat with you in the cold. That's the table worth building. And once you're sitting at it, you'll realize you were never missing the other one at all.